more things on the list that I was supposed to say.
Oh, well, no, I guess I could give a little intro. For those of you who know, I do the voice of Goofy and Pluto for the Disney company. And how many of you know who Goofy is? Dwarves, it's an easy job. I just go in and say, help me. They go home and they pay me. So it's an exciting job. And we have Pluto fans up here in the front. You know, didn't react at all. So. Well, probably the best way to start is just to tell you a little bit about myself and open it up for questions, because that always leads to great stories and stuff like that. So any and all things you ever wanted to know about Goofy and Pluto and any other characters and voice actors behind the scenes, that kind of stuff, just feel free to ask, and be glad to answer anything that you'd like. I'll tell you a little bit about myself, and first of all, the most important thing is, how did I get this wacky job? Because it's not a normal thing. You don't go to, get Goofy 101 in college. It's just not done. So I grew up in a little town in south central Kansas, and there it's, we have wheat and tornadoes. That's all we have. And little town of 7,000, and I was always a movie nut ever since I was little. We had one theater in the town, and every Saturday I'd go and they'd show double features and cartoons and the Three Stooges and all sorts of stuff on Saturdays. So we would go down there and just spend our whole day. And it just captured my imagination. And I never thought about really doing this for a living at that time. I just enjoyed it. And I didn't know, it seemed like a million miles away from little town in Kansas to be in Hollywood and to do cartoons or animation, even though I loved it. And I would practice voices around, the house, and we'd, like on Saturday morning, I'd watch all the cartoon shows, and usually would sound like, hey, Rocky, watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat.
Yes, Inspector, nothing to it in the mountains. Where's little Nell?
Well, see, dog, Captain Crunch cereal stays crunchy even in milk.
Oh, hi, it's me, Crunky Frog. Where are you?
And then my parents would turn the set on, so it was like... And I'd run around and I'd do these voices. My parents didn't know what to think of me, so I would go up and I'd do, like, whoever. In those days, we'd have, like, they'd go with George Burns for dinner, Mom, I need to shut off for dinner, and then she'd, our Billy's weird, My mom didn't know what to think of me, and my dad thought, something's really wrong with that kid. And I never thought that it would be anything other than just fun. And as we got older and I learned to drive, my friends would put me up to doing voices. We'd drive through places like, McDonald's or something, and they'd say, do a weird voice. And I'd like a Whopper with cheese, and Arnold the pig would like a Coca-Cola, and then everyone would laugh. But I never knew it was going to be a career. And I went to college and got a degree in journalism. So I kicked around in radio for a number of years, creating, characters. And, those radio stations, they were little podunk stations in Texas and Oklahoma and Kansas. And, they didn't care what I did as long as people listened, and I played records once in a while. So I would invent characters and use some of those, the voices, like there was a Wolfman Jack, who was a big DJ at the time, and
yeah, the boys kind of like this. I do rock and roll with Wolfman Jack.
I didn't know that there were like copyrights on people's voices and stuff. So I just would do characters. And then in 1982 in Dallas, I went to a comedy club, and comedy was in the heyday right there. So I decided I'd give it a shot. So the next week I wrote a little comedy routine, went up, and got a pretty good response. And it was scary, but I did get some applause and stuff. And the host of that comedy club was a guy who went on to great fame named Bill Engvall, who was, if you've seen the Blue Collar Comedy Tour with Jeff Foxworthy and Larry the Cable Guy and Bill, he hit it big in Hollywood, but he was the house comic practicing, his stuff. And he said, hey, you ought to give this a shot. I think you got something. So I went back and back, week after week, and before long I was starting to do clubs around Texas, and I did that from 1982 through 1986, and then decided to move to California to give it a shot. And as luck would have it, after moving to California, I was able to get an agent And then about 4 months after that, my agent said, do you do any of the Disney characters? And I said, well, I can kind of, most people can kind of do a Mickey Mouse. If you can do that falsetto, gosh, oh, oh, you can kind of get in the ballpark of that. I couldn't do Donald because you got to do that cheek thing, and I can make the noise. That's all I can say. But Wars Goofy just kind of came easy to me. And out of about 1,200 people that tried out, they picked me. And then in January of 1987, I got to do my first job. And, you know, I'm not an employee of Disney and never have been. We're all freelance actors. We're like a plumber. We come in and do a job and go home, and they pay us. And, you know, I didn't know if it was 1 time, 2 times, whatever. And they invited me to come back and do it again, and then again, and again, and again. And after 30 years for Disney, I've probably done about 3,500 different jobs. So they're still hiring me. I'm still barking for a living, and it's a wacky and weird job. Well, and I actually they came over from Japan for the Kingdom Hearts recordings to kind of oversee. And some of them didn't speak any English. And I remember once they gave me a direction for Pluto, and it was like, oh, woof, woof, woof. And I go, whoa, whoa, whoa. Oh, that's very good. So strange. It was so strange. So that's the only time we've had to do that. So you never know what the procedure is going to be when you go into the studio. It could be, you know, a lot of times it's just you get the script and do it. Other times if you have a song or something, you get to practice it a while. And it can take a lot more time depending on the project. When we did Goof Troop, we do a half-hour show in about 2.5, 3 hours, the whole script, 40-some pages. When I did a Goofy movie later on, I worked on that off and on for almost 2 years. And about 40 different recording sessions, because they do something, oh, that scene didn't work, and they would kind of like get rid of that scene, rewrite it, redo it, and over that couple of year period, they kind of melded this into the story that it became. And I'm glad they took that time, because it's the 21st anniversary of that this year, and that was also cool because the first time I saw myself on screen, which is a whole weird thing, you know, you see yourself with an audience in a theater, was for a short we did called The Prince and the Pauper, and which was beautiful, you know, and I finally heard myself with an audience, and it was really cool to see. But the next time was a Goofy movie, and that was kind of unique because, you know, it's a father and son thing, and my son was about 5 when that came out. And it totally screwed him up, because he's like, you know, you go with my son Austin, are you Max's brother? And are you Goofy's son? And he said, I thought I was that guy's son, and I didn't think I had a brother. So it was like 15 years to get over that.
Do shed your weary clothes.
Well, forgot it from there on, but if I can remember where my wallet is, I'm happy. At the D23 convention last year, we got to have a Goofy movie panel, which I'm exceedingly proud of. Don Hahn, who produced Beauty and the Beast, Lion King, helped put this together. And he got Tevin Campbell, who did Powerline. And I'd never met him until that night, that panel. About a half an hour before we went on stage, I got to meet him. And so he sang Eye to Eye live. And Jason Marsden, who did Max, didn't get to sing in the it was a singer named Aaron Lohr. And the first thing we did on that movie were the songs. And they didn't know Jason could sing, but he can sing fine. So we got to rectify that, because in front of about 1,200 people, we got to sing The Open Road, me and Jason, for the first time ever. And it was like, oh, it was like being the applause and stuff was incredible. We had like a 3-minute standing ovation. It was like being one of the Beatles coming out. And it was incredible. And before that, D23, a Disney blog had like the top 10 panels to see. And we weren't even among the top 10. Afterwards, we were the #1. We were the only panel that got 100% satisfaction. We beat out the Star Wars panel, and they had George Lucas and Harrison Ford. So I'm really proud of that. That was a memorable sequence. When I'm doing a cartoon, it's usually from the beginning of the cartoon to the end. But the Kingdom Hearts dialogue is like in this big thick binder, and they'll say, okay, go to page 18, now page 82, now 114. And the rest of the lines are in Japanese, and I just have my lines, so I don't know what's coming before or after. It's difficult acting, and the odd part about it is, and it's like dubbing a Japanese monster movie. You know how they always kind of get in this staccato rhythm, like, Godzilla is attacking the city. Because the Japanese, it's a staccato kind of voice, and you start picking up that rhythm. So the worst Goofy might sound a little bit more like this, like, it's the Heartless, let's go! Come on, Sora! And it's more technique than like linear acting, because I don't know the story as much. I have to get a lot from the director. Okay, this is really big, he's being attacked, or he's very sad, or some basic emotions that I have to play. But it's a difficult style of acting, and it's much harder than, I say, just doing it linearly off of a script. And to do it right, you just have to really do it loud. And I say, okay, turn down the volume. And they'll say, okay, I'm ready. And then I'll do it. And I always go, so now we're above the parking lot. And this is the only first monorail in the Western Hemisphere. We're now approaching the Disneyland Hotel. It was kind of like that, if I can remember it.
They don't show in like the goofy ones, like where they made the women's driving joke for 50s, or some drinking moments.
Oh yeah, he got to do all the fun stuff. He was kind of a henpecked husband in some. He smoked, he drank, he was a bad driver, turned into Mr. Wheeler, and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's cool. That was a lot of fun.
And also with all the violence from the popular, infamous sports ones, like the hockey one was the big example.
Yeah, and in those days, now we're getting to do more of that kind of stuff with the Mickey Mouse shorts, because we're kind of hearkening back to that day. And so Wayne would have loved doing Mickey in the shorts, because he was always afraid that Mickey had become too bland, like the logo for the company. So they were afraid to do new stuff with him. Now, especially with John Lasseter, who's kind of, this is great. He's kind of pushed this forward, and I think the scripts are hilarious and just amazing. They just did one called, I'm not in this one, called Split Decisions, where Goofy goes into, Donald goes in and gets in a machine from Ludwig von Drake and gets split into the good Donald and the evil Donald, which is kind of like a Incredible Hulk, just pure anger, the pleasant, I love you. And it's really a hilarious one. And these are things we wouldn't have gotten to do in the old days, but they're getting a little more edgy and a lot more fun.